we're caught up on The Last of Us. This week it threw a little bit of a monkey wrench into the plans because they released the episode on Friday because they're so afraid of the Super Bowl that they can't release the show on the same day or anywhere in the vicinity.
It's called the big game. It's not called. You can't call it the Super Bowl. Okay.
Oh, is that a trademark thing that they will charge for if you even say it?
Yes.
Wow. Well, the
big
big game
costs us $7.50.
The game is so big that even uttering its actual name will get you fined. So that's good
It's
to
like
know.
it's like Voldemort. You got to be careful how you talk about it.
Well, save that transition for later because we have more to talk about Voldemort. That was foreshadowing, though. That was beautiful. That was unplanned. So this week, Last of Us Episode 5 dropped. I don't think we've talked about Episode 4, so maybe we start there. Before we get started, Producer Vince, you in the house?
I don't think he's in the house. I think he's...
Hey, I'm in the apartment,
he's here!
Wow, you got those hotkeys working, huh?
I got the hotkeys, dude. It's a click, but we'll get the hotkeys next week.
Okay,
you
great.
Fancy out-of-focus background.
You racked focus, young man. All right, so we're all caught up. Let's start on Episode 4. I'll start out. I liked Episode 4. I thought it was awesome. There you go. I'll explain.
Wow,
I'll deconstruct that a little bit, but
yeah, that was detailed. I almost felt like it was kind of cool. I watched 4 and 5 back to back like 20 minutes ago, so I'm still a little emotionally wrecked, but yeah, it was cool. Like I felt like that was like 4 and 5 is almost like one movie.
Yeah.
So kind of made sense to have them together.
Yeah, Episode 4, I felt like again, I feel like I have to qualify myself as not a person that didn't play the game. But man, I feel like
it's like the scarlet letter that you have to wear. You have to tell everybody beforehand. Now, before you hear my opinion, I did not play the game, and then they shame you, and then you can move on and then have an opinion.
Well, it's my way of keeping people at an arm's distance, so that way, if they think I played the game, if I start talking about the show and they're like, "Oh, the game," da 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 da, I'm like, "No,
the game.
Hold on, I don't know where this is all going, so please don't ruin it for me."
That's what I do with Harry Potter when I have to be like, I didn't read the books. Okay, I only read the first book in 6th grade.
I understand the books are different. They're better. They always are.
Okay, we get it.
But I thought this episode was awesome, and the performances from Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey I thought were awesome, and I thought their characters and their characters' relationship. This is really kind of a turning point episode, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought like the running joke of the joke was awesome. And I loved the way that they kind of landed the episode with, Joel being the one to figure out the joke and use that as kind of their bonding. But I felt like it gave me a lot more about Ellie's character that I've kind of been looking for. It endeared me more to that character. But yeah, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a great episode. And it, especially coming off of Episode 3 where it was such a diverged a little bit from the overall storyline. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I like that moment. Like there's some moments that were like just supernatural, not supernatural, but supernatural about like what you're saying, really like character building, like relationship things with Ellie and Joel. Like, like in the game, she gets I played the game. In the game, she gets the joke. Like 4 and 5, like really like there were like very little things that they changed from the game, which was a good call, I think. Like the joke book was like, it's such a cool thing. Like that's in the game, and it really kind of shows a different side to Ellie, and like she's less like sort of like vicious and more just like innocence, and reminded, she's 14. Yeah. So I'm like, I laughed a few times, like when she's like in the sleeping bag, she's like, Joel.
Yeah.
Like yells at him.
Yeah, and I thought Joel was really contrasted, in this episode too, because of Ellie, and like where they're able to kind of meet in the middle of, the scene that sticks out to me is where he's basically like, "I'm sorry, you shouldn't have to see this." He's basically apologizing for, the pandemic or the epidemic or whatever it's called in this game.
For the lockdowns.
He's apologizing for he's a COVID apologist, but I thought that was really cool the way he had they've done a really good job of portraying this character, and Pedro Pascal, the performance aspect of it is awesome as well, because he's this guarded dude, and to see his humanity come out and the wall kind of coming down, which you assume it will at some point because of the story, and you've kind of seen this story before in The Mandalorian, but I feel like this episode was great for that, for purely character wise. I thought
he's
it was
your
awesome.
Cargo, Baby Yoda. I mean, Ellie. Should we take that one again?
He's like, They're like, whoa, you're mixing IPs here, okay? And again, don't say Super Bowl in this take. All right, let's run it again. You're gonna charge the whole studio. But yeah, I think like that was the first episode where I went, oh, okay, I understand now why they cast him specifically in this role. You know, a guy who is heroic in certain. He's a little bit more nebulous in terms of the means justifying the ends, and I just love that little character moment where they're having these conversations. You know, on the other side, Ellie is also revealing more of her fears and what she's afraid of throughout all of this stuff, and it's cool to see them kind of relate in that, and they've set that up really well.
Yeah, especially when she's like, this is episode 5, but like at the end when she's like writing down, you know, Henry's like, you don't seem scared. Like, why aren't you scared? And she's like, oh, I'm always scared.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, especially, you know, in these episodes, you start to see kind of the chinks in the armor of Joel and how like he is a person and like he doesn't always. It's like he's still trying to like parent or at least be like an authority figure. You can tell, you know, through the performance too, where like there's moments where like he doesn't really know like what to do. Like any parent, like he doesn't really like have the answers. Right, and has to kind of like make it up as you go along. Like I was interested to know like how he was going to react when like, you know, Ellie's revealed that she's like has this gun and uses it. Like it's like, how's he going to react to that? Because it's like maybe she was right that she should have had a gun the whole time.
Well, and she was proven right because she saved his life, you know, and that was cool. I mean, that was because like you know that's in her back pocket, and we're waiting for the moment where that, you know, that setup is revealed or paid off. And I thought it was cool. You know, they get into Kansas City. That whole scene was really rad. I loved when they're rolling into Kansas City and, you know, her being this little innocent kid is like, "You're gonna stop to help him," and he's just like, "No," puts it in reverse, and then it just goes, you know. And I thought that the setup from episode 4, you're very right. This definitely ties into episode 5. So the setup at the end of episode 4,
I thought about it as just real quick the that's bait meme when he's like the guy's like, help me, like coming out of behind the building.
Yeah.
Like, nope, that guy doesn't need help.
So at the end of episode 4, Joel and Ellie are confronted or awoken. Joel is woken by Ellie, who has a gun pointed to her head by a new character named Henry, played by Lamar Johnson. And I want to specifically call out the actors of these two roles because I thought they were amazing and so nuanced in episode 5. Lamar Johnson plays Henry, and then his brother Sam is played by Kevon Woodard, and that really pays off and transitions well into episode 5. You know, they kind of Tarantino it where you start on these new set of characters and they go back and they show you their story up until the moment that we see them interact and intersect with Joel and Ellie in a way that, like, I kept thinking about our discussion about episode 3 in this one, because I think we all agree episode 3 we enjoyed, but for me, you know, it deviated a lot off that main story. And this one, it kind of did the exact thing I was kind of looking for in that one, where it's, you know, established these new characters, told their story, but it also Joel and Ellie's story along for the ride, so to speak, because, you know, he crashes his car. Get it? It kind of makes sense when you think about it.
Good.
So I thought that was really well executed.
You got a truckload of jokes now,
dude. I'm just
that wasn't very good. I'll think of some better ones.
I'm just banging on all cylinders here, man. That's a mechanic joke. If my mechanic friends out there will.
That wasn't good, but we can edit that out, so don't worry about it. It's okay.
Well, the hard part is choosing which of the bad jokes we actually do want to use. So that's where the real.
Just say 7 of them, and then we'll pick one later.
Just bash people over the head with it. But what did you think about that, Dave?
Bad.
What did you think of? Caught you off guard with that one. What did you think of those performances? And again, you know, kind of tell me, I guess, like how does episode 5 relate with the game? How much of what we saw in episode 5 was also included in the game, or how much of it was kind of used differently for the show?
I'm still reeling from it, or should I say wheeling? All right. I again, like, I want to call out the art department that worked on this. Like, where's the Moss guy? Because, dude, like I'm just amazed how, like, okay, like I think it was episode 4 when they went into was it 5? No, it was 5 when they're going down into the tunnels and they find the area that was like one of the original like quarantine zones that people went in. It's got all the like kids' toys and stuff like that. Like, that's another like set that's just like so close to the game. Like I couldn't believe it. Like it seemed like like my memories just came back and it was like, but it's not just like certain props. It's like the shape of the buildings like look the same as the game. It's like wild. Yeah. But and then like, you know, as soon as I heard her say, because like I played the game 7 years ago, so it's like it's been a long time. Like I don't remember that much stuff. But as soon as like I think it's Kathleen said like mentioned Henry, I was like, oh shit, Henry.
Yeah.
And then like the crayon, like when you get in the crayon room, and it's just like because when you find in the game, it's crazy because there's just crayon drawings everywhere around you, and you're like, what is this? Why? But yeah, that was great. And like I agree with you. I thought 4 and 5, like these episodes are like like the story at its best. Like this is when the game was at its best. These are my favorite areas so far. 5 is probably my favorite episode so far.
Yeah.
Just how emotional it was. And we're like, I think it's at its best when it's exploring like all those gray areas of humanity, you know, where like, again, like you don't have the answers to everything. Like, you know, Ellie and Joel have this conversation about like, oh, like, well, did you kill innocent people? Sort of like in a way of like needing him to have the comfort of saying like, no, of course I didn't. But then he just says nothing. And it's like, you know, it's just really exploring that of like, and then it's revealed like Ellie's like hurt some people before and she's 14 and like oh man, and the ending sniper stuff is like that was another moment where like memories of the game just came flooding back because like hearing those like even the sound design of like the guns like increment of like going off like made me it's like
yeah,
just like monotonously like firing the sniper rifle. It's like, oh my god, I remember this part. And I remember how hard it was like when you have to grab the sniper rifle and you have to hit the right things or else like everyone dies. Like you have to hit like I think you have to actually hit the truck driver like exactly how they did it. But yeah, I thought this was awesome. Like I forgot about all the stuff of like the truck like disturbing a bunch of them that come up from the ground, and then of course like the bloater that comes up. Like they're called bloaters in the game, and there's these huge, massive like tank like dude. So that looked awesome. That was like really cool. And then as soon as that happens, I remembered like how it all played out with Henry and Sam, I think his name was. I was like, oh no. I know.
So that element of it was pretty accurate or was included in the game.
Yeah, it's super accurate. Like exactly everything that plays out at the end is like pretty much exactly what happens. It's like super emotional. And then I remembered like this is still really early in the game when that happened. So I'm remembering like, oh, there's a lot to go left. Like that's kind of the first thing they encounter that's like really like messes them up because they sort of got to know these brothers. Yeah, so he's not in the game. He's not deaf.
That was one of my questions. Yeah.
I was trying to remember if he was or not. And so they added that, which was interesting. And I guess the actor is also actually deaf, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
In a way, it's like we've kind of like for some reason it's like we've seen a lot of characters that are deaf in the last like few years. It's like really come to the forefront. I think there's been like 3 or 4 instances, like Echo and some other things we've seen. But yeah, I did think that added like an interesting element to it. And then the character of Kathleen was not actually in the game. They actually like it was kind of like you didn't know specific characters as much that were in this like resistance group. That was kind of interesting that they also made her like almost like meek a little bit.
Yeah,
which was kind of interesting. Like, I don't know if I was kind of like, yeah, like, would someone like that actually rise to like a leadership position? Like, I guess they could. Like, it just depends on like how things played out. But yeah, those are the main things.
Yeah, no, you brought up some kind of overlapping stuff that I wanted to talk about. I mean, also my question in the game, one of them was he deaf in the game, because it's almost as a strength in this, which I really enjoyed. So I didn't know if that was more for the TV show purposes, which it sounds like it is. But man, they did such a good job of making you care so much about these brothers in not a lot of time. And I was just really stuck at like, wow, I can't believe that I care so much about these brothers, that the impact of the end was so heavy, you know? So I really like that. I loved in the game when they go through the tunnels. Do you see that? Like, is that a level where you're going through the tunnels, or because they get out of the tunnel, they're in their neighborhood? And I was kind of disappointed, kind of similarly to episode 3, where I was disappointed that Ellie and Joel, you didn't see them kind of traverse to get to Frank's house and have to go through, you know, the different bosses or whatever you want to say to get to their house. I was a little disappointed that we didn't get to see them fighting through the tunnel, because they set it up so much and they put so much emphasis on, you know, Henry's basically like, I'm bringing you along as muscle because I don't have it in me. And then the turn.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, once they get into the neighborhood and all of the people and Kathleen, they corner them. But the truck at the very beginning that Joel shoots the driver, he crashes into a house. The house bursts into flames. And then the truck starts sinking into the ground into what I guess presumably is like a sinkhole. And then you find out it's actually one of the tunnels. And all of that stuff that they set up 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the before in the episode pays off so well. And I felt like an idiot because I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, why are you expecting them to give you? And that's really one thing I'll say about this show. What you expect them to give you, they don't necessarily always follow through on in a positive way. I fell for the traps. I fell for the video game aspect of the show.
You fell for the sinkholes.
But little touches like that are cool because it's like you're not playing the game, you're watching a show. It's a different entity, it's a different way of telling the story. So when that paid off, man, it was awesome.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it is kind of like you're expecting. I feel like the game, or I feel like the show does a good job of, like, it's kind of like maybe just so much of watching Walking Dead, or at least old Walking Dead, of like anytime you're wondering if something bad is gonna happen, it always happens.
Yeah,
which is like fine, but also like we've kind of seen that so many times. It's kind of refreshing to see something where it's like, oh, they did make it through the night. Like, okay, so it's almost like adds to the suspense.
But like that's what I'm talking about too when I'm like I'm just burnt out on zombie stuff. That's why, because we talk about all the time, like you see a lot of modern comedy is one joke and they'll put they'll exhaust a joke because with a lot of stuff, especially sketches, especially like comedic movies, you have one overarching joke like that, ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys with other jokes. And in zombie stories, I feel like it's similar where we get it. It's a zombie apocalypse. That's what the premise of the show is. But how are you going to find ways to circumvent that in each season? And if you don't, then it just becomes the same repetitive thing. And I think to your point, that's what we've seen with The Walking Dead. I think that's why The Walking Dead fell off, because people realized after season 2, like, this is going to be the same thing. And yeah, there's new characters introduced, characters come and go, but at the same time, it's still just a zombie apocalypse. This is just so much about they're able to take this overarching, this huge big picture thing and really whittle it down into this intimate story, which culminates, at the end of this episode. I don't feel like I've had such a strong emotional reaction. Again, I wasn't blubbering or whatever, but it really, like, you feel at the end of this episode, and spoilers, I mean, this definitely is spoilers, but when Henry shoots Sam, number one, that whoever directed this episode did an amazing job, because that scenario, I mean, they make you feel, they put you into that room and into the head of Henry having to make the choice to shoot his little brother, and then his reaction after, which is like, what did I just do? And then Joel sees it. Joel sees where it's going as soon as it happens.
Yeah.
And his whole thing is like, I have to de-escalate the situation.
You need to give me the gun right now.
Yeah. And it just, man, the tension and the heightening of that scene was so good. And I didn't see it coming. There's so many points in this episode where I thought we were winding down and we were at the end of the episode. And then they just ramp it back up, with different stuff. And then the other thing I loved was the very end of the episode after they bury Henry and Sam, and Ellie kind of has this weird moment of like going off by herself, and you're like, what's she doing? And then she just turns around to Joel and is like, let's keep moving. And it was such a cool character moment because you really see how far she's come only, in these 5 episodes.
It's like simultaneously, like, she's growing stronger, and that's like simultaneously a really good and bad thing, where, like, I think for Joel, like, that kind of catches Joel off guard, and she's like, it's like really sad because it's like, oh, this is a 14-year-old that's super hardened. Yeah. All of a sudden, that has to be like, and that's like not fair at all. It's like definitely depressing. But like, you got to do what you got to do. Also, that's how you survive. So, yeah, I was gonna say too. Yeah, like his performance with the gun when he has to shoot his brother at the end was like, I don't think I've seen anything that like plays out quite like that.
Yeah,
where his his immediate instinct was to shoot him because he's infected, because he's a zombie, and then it takes him a couple seconds to realize like what he just did, like on instinct. And so you see it afterward. Like, we're so used to seeing the build up to shooting, you're like, oh no, how can I do, like, sort of a thing. Whereas this is kind of like the reverse, which was interesting. and then he has this like crazy freak out moment like after that. Another interesting thing, like I thought that I thought the fact that they were brothers, because I also had forgotten that they were brothers, adds like such an interesting dynamic to Henry's character, because we're used to seeing like parental figures, and like I think we kind of get that, like, you know, obviously as a parent you have to, or even as like a Joel Ellie relationship, like that's your responsibility. It's something you kind of signed up for, right? To like protect them. But with brothers, it's kind of like you didn't necessarily sign up for that. Like they're your brother. You're kind of just thrust into that, like when something happens to your parents.
Yeah.
So it was interesting seeing Henry, like trying to be like a father figure, but not really know what he's doing at all. And sort of being forced to like grow up more than he probably should either.
Well, and the sacrifices that, you know, he has to make to get to that point, and for his brother, you know, and this outlaw on the run, and then you find out he ended up killing Kathleen's brother, and you know he's public enemy number one, and how that related with Joel and Ellie, I thought was also a really cool connection. And
again, he's kind of like, I actually kind of deserve this. Like, it's not like a simple thing where it's like I'm good and they're bad. It's like, you know, and that's what the game was all about. It was like, anytime, you know, you see somebody is kind of like the protagonist or like a supporting character, like it turns on you and you find out more things about it. Then you're like, oh, okay, well, it's a lot of it is just so much about perspective and like, you know.
Yeah, certainly. But I thought it was great. Vince, what did you think about episodes 4 and 5 of The Last of Us? We haven't heard much of your opinion on this stuff.
Dude. I really liked him. To go back to a few of the points you guys made, was her name Kathleen? The character, the one that
named after Kathleen Kennedy.
Okay. I was like, oh, really? I did not like her like character. I don't know if I really care for that actress. So spoilers, the fact that she died at the end, I was very excited about. I feel like I feel like the way that they kind of did the storytelling in this was confusing, because they never really gave you the answer till the end of why she was like so cutthroat about this, and then you slowly got details as it went. You slowly figured out that it was an uprising of the people that were raped and murdered for 20 years from, what was the name of the organization that?
Fedra. Yeah, because Fedra is really like the, you know, it's really what the government like turned into.
Yeah, so
to handle it. But of course when it you know, when shit hits the fan, it ends up being like there's people in power and there's not people in power, and those people are gonna try to enslave the other people. And
so the way that they like kind of tied it all together, I loved. But during it and not having those answers, well, I don't know. Like at first I was like, oh, I fucking hate this character. Why is she here? Why is she so upset? Why is she, I think Eli said, like kind of timid but in control of everything? And then her like right-hand man at some point was like, oh, your brother was the blah blah blah, but you were the one that like had the plan, and whatever he said about that. And I was like, okay, but I still feel like that character like is not believable in the sense of like taking.
I really like that element of it. I like that it was an unconventional warlord, you know, head of a faction of resistance fighters. I appreciated that it wasn't the traditional, like, you know, stereotype of that role.
Yeah, because
to me it's like, in talking about world building and really, Vince, like, the cool thing about, you referenced it in episode 3 about how they're building out the universe of The Last of Us. And I felt like that really played in. I was thinking about that a lot during this episode, because it really played into that, you know. And so to me, it just like reinforces the idea that this is a group of humans. It's a group of humans that are set on a certain way, or understand a way of life, especially American characters that are used to a certain way of life or certain personalities. And it's for me, that choice and that actress and the way she portrayed that role, I appreciated, because it kind of made the diversity of thought in terms of who would rise to the top in this world, in a post-apocalyptic world. You know, maybe, you know, it could be somebody that's just a dick and ruthless, which is what she was, but she went about it in a different way that I didn't see coming. And there was a lot in this episode that they set up things that they didn't reveal till the end, but I felt like the payoff was great because of that.
The payoff
I
was
think
great.
it alludes to the fact that it's like kind of it seemed like she was kind of ruling along with her brother for a while, and he was more the idealistic one that was like,
Forgive.
hey guys, we need to not give up on each other and band together. And like she was the more like realistic one that's like, you know, it's like, hey, your brother was great. He honestly was like the best person I've ever known. But like actually your decisions are what like got us results because we just slaughtered everybody. So I thought, you know, that aspect of it was interesting.
And she also kind of mentioned that like her brother was the one that kind of kept her as like the not timid, but like not burn the earth down. And now that he's gone, like her true self can come out, and like the optimism died with him, which was cool. Again, I think I just go back to me not being the biggest fan of that actress. Another thing I don't think you guys mentioned yet. What'd you guys think of the very end when Ellie sees that the boy is bitten, and she's like, "Oh my god, I can fix this, and my blood is the medicine." Like, how much of that?
I was going to go back to that. That was one of my favorite moments because
it gave like
cool.
optimism, like, "Oh, there's a way out of this," and then you find out after that that's not the case at all.
Yeah, that to me too was also a reminder that she's 14 too, to be like, oh no, this is the whole thing. Like my blood like can help people. That's like why. So like, oh, it's cool. Like I can fix this. You know, it was like a childish way to like, because she wasn't freaking out at all. It was like, okay, like she didn't run and tell Joel. Like it was like, oh yeah, we can like do this. And maybe, you know, part of her probably knew that like that wasn't gonna work, but like. That I don't know. Yeah, that was just such a pure like pure moment of like, you know, no adults in the room, just seeing like this new dynamic.
Just a kid thinking that she can fix everything by smearing her blood on it.
Yeah, and then carrying the guilt when that doesn't work. I thought that was a really nice payoff too,
and leading to that, hardening her even more.
The note that she wrote and left on his grave, I thought was, dude, it was just like that episode was really devastating in the best way possible. And yeah, I'm really excited to see, you know, we're, I guess, at the halfway point of this season. So I'm really excited to see where it ends up and where it goes, and kind of reflecting with you guys that are familiar with the game on how much of it, because that's a great resource that I get to play, or a great resource that I have while I'm watching the episodes, because I can kind of sit there and go, I bet this was in the game. And then like a lot of the stuff you guys are saying is like stuff that, you know, either was in the game that's not in the show, or, you know, different motives, the different character portrayals and character, you know, roles in the overall universe. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes though.
Maybe I could watch the next one with you and just sit next to you the whole time and go, that wasn't the game. That wasn't in the game. Or like I'm pointing out Stan Lee cameos. Well, that's Stan Lee. He created Marvel.
As if Eli doesn't know.
An episode that just turns into a 3-hour affair and dissection of gaming versus filmmaking in terms of story.
Oh man, but, I realize I don't remember anything about that game. Like we're watching and Paige is like, "Is this in the game?" And I was like, "I don't remember. I don't remember anything. I don't remember the
my
characters."
wife has a better memory of like what exactly was in it, and yeah, when she was kind of calling out things, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right." But I do think, going back to what you said earlier, Eli, like, you know, I can't help but compare the two, and kind of what you said were like, oh, I like, part of me kind of wishes you saw more of like, you know, them getting through the tunnels. Like we didn't really see that, like, you know, yeah, and that is such a big part of the game. Like, obviously, like, the game's, like, you know, 40 hours for a reason, where, like, tons of it is, like, I failed in killing this clicker 7 times, and I'm really pissed now, and I just want to fucking kill it. You know, that eats up a lot of time. But it's also, like, you know, you spend a lot of time with them, like, in the tunnels, like, going from A to B. Like, you know, the whole game is, like, going from one place to another. And obviously there's a reason that's, you know, so much of that is cut out, but at the same time, it does kind of make me think like, well, I actually feel like I grew with the characters a lot during those moments too, though, because like the voice lines are so good, the little conversations they're having with each other, like little discoveries of things. And so I don't know, I guess obviously it's a different medium. Like I think for the most part, they're making all great decisions, but, part of me hopes like they don't like rush it too much, that they, you know, they don't end up in like a Game of Thrones situation where it's like, we don't have any more material. Like, I hope they take their time and really like do it right. But yeah, I'm really liking it.
It seems like they're embracing the TV-ness of this you know, this concept. And that's what's really cool, because again, you constantly see adaptations of video games like that Uncharted game, which I understand. And Vince was saying, I think it was on the last show, that Naughty Dog makes that game as well. And that movie is so just like corporate, paint by numbers action story that you're not sitting there going like, you almost forget that it was a game in a bad way, where you're like, this is just a generic story. And I've never played Uncharted, so I don't know what that story entails either. But, I assume it's something akin, it reminds me of like a Indiana Jones style kind of, swashbuckling adventure game. But it just was so watered down and so generic, and, nothing was memorable. So it just seems like the team and the people involved in this show are really sophisticated in terms of differentiating what the game story tells and how it's portrayed and how the TV medium is portrayed. So again, kind of, saying the same thing now, but I'm really excited to see where it goes. And yeah, I did not anticipate liking the show as much as I do and looking forward to it each week. Maybe not on a Friday, maybe, you just go against the big game, otherwise known as the Super Bowl. And it's so weird. I couldn't figure out, like, we live in an age where you watch everything. You don't watch things usually at the time that they air. You're watching them on HBO Max.
It was kind of weird.
I didn't even put two and two together.
But I think too, there's so much dialogue with this show that maybe they're just like didn't want to take away from the dialogue of people talking about it. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. It's the buzz that they're looking for going into the weekend, and yeah.
Dave, what you said too, I think like with Uncharted, it's like it's true that like, but that is sort of like the formula we've had forever with video game adaptations into films and movies, which is why they're never good. Where it's always like they get writers or filmmakers in there that are like, well, I didn't really play the game, but like, I think I can make it better by doing all these other things and making it this other thing. And then it's like they're never good.
Or it becomes the greatest hits of the game. It's like we're gonna hit all of our action pieces. We're gonna base on like, what do people like most about the game, instead of like the meat and bones of what the game is and what
what's the heart of it,
story is. Yeah.
What do we want to take that's like amazing, and what can be changed or altered to better this other medium? Yeah, for sure.
Vince, did you have it sounded earlier? Looked like you had something else.
Yeah,
to say
I was just gonna add one thing. I don't know if Dave feels this way. I kind of want them. I don't know if it would be like an after the fact, like after the show thing, but I kind of want them, like you mentioned. Like the game aspect of it, of them like running through the tunnels and dying. Like I kind of want that, and then them resetting as if it didn't happen. Like I don't know how they would be able to do that, but just Ellie, like, because I've been playing the game, and if you fuck up, like one of the clickers just tears your throat out.
Oh, dude, yeah, they
like,
they make you watch as you get ripped to pieces,
and it's so intense, dude. So I can just imagine like if it started, like maybe they started out like that, and she's through the tunnel, and she fucks up, makes a sound, it bites and rips her throat out, and then she wakes up, and then it's just a dream. But like that would be so intense.
Can I pitch you
to make you go through that?
Yeah.
The name of the episode is Respawn.
Yeah, dude, that's what I mean.
But they go back through the entire season, and just like each sequence is a different sequence from the previous episodes, where the mission that they had succeeded in they end up dying. And it's a total parody, and it's a joke, right? And it's played like it's comedic and not like trying to be serious. Dude, that would win like
it would be insane, especially because like if they went
it would piss a lot of people off, but I think it'd be hilarious.
But if they went balls out and like made it as graphic as the video game, it would be insane, dude.
Well, it kind of like at the end when you see the it's kind of in the background, but when you see the bloater just rip the dude's head off, the lieutenant dude, that's the kind of thing where like you get desensitized to like playing the game, because you fuck up so many times and you have to watch yourself, like your throat being ripped out or like whatever. It's almost like it makes you like the characters in the game, because you feel like you've gone through like
you don't want
so
them
much
to
heartache
die.
to like get them to where they are. You're like,
I can relate.
Yes, I've finally done this. Like,
and it also
hardened and like
it sits there with it.
I don't live in your world, but I can relate with it. Okay.
Yeah, so I it's like things like that where I do kind of still feel like, okay, I mean, the game is still like the best way to play this, but the show's good too.